All right, all right. Welcome back to another episode of Light Skin, episode 36. Keep on creeping up, and it's going well. And we have a good friend of mine here. If you want to introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Deb DeLuca, and I'm the executive director at the Duluth Seaway Port Authority.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on with us.
Yeah, no, this is such an honor, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, oh, definitely. So we're excited. Plus, I got a lot of questions about the ports because I don't know much about ports. Only what you see on movies and stuff, which is...
Come down and get a tour sometime.
Yeah, definitely. That would be fun.
Okay.
That would be fun. Yeah. Well, I'll start off like we start with everybody. Tell us about Baby Deb.
Baby Deb?
Yeah, Baby Deb.
You know, I'm old. I think I'm older than most of your guests, so I guess it's going to take up a whole chunk of time.
No, that's okay.
I was born in Madison, Wisconsin. Okay. I don't know where you want me to start.
Yeah.
I'm the third of 4 siblings. So,
okay.
And the middleest of the middle kids because the other's the oldest boy.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So my parents, my dad was a biochemistry professor at Madison.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. He has his own interesting history. He's the son of Italian immigrants. And,
okay.
And then my mom was so I was born in. I mean, I guess I can tell you when I was born.
Yeah.
Give away my age.
If you
I was
want.
born in 1960.
Okay.
So in that context, my mom had actually had a master's in biochemistry, but then she was what's the right she stayed at home with the kids and raised the kids and did a lot of volunteer work in the city and the like. But so that's where I was born.
Yeah. What was it like growing up in Madison? Like, what kind of things did y'all do down there?
Oh man, I think it was a great childhood. We had spent a lot of time outdoors.
Yeah. Okay.
I rode my bike all over the place. I rode my bike a lot.
Yeah.
We spent every weekend in the winters alpine skiing. But both days you had to get out there when the hill opened.
Yep.
And off the hill. Now, I couldn't get off the hill until the end of the day, and
yep.
Did a lot of stuff with the family. Did a lot of camp backpacking, and it was it was a great city to grow up in.
Yeah, for sure.
Access to the lake, just like here.
Joe got to smiling because he coaches skiing, alpine skiing. So I seen him from the corner get all cheesy and always give him shit about how it's not a real sport, but it's actually hard. I can't do it.
Well,
I can't do it at all.
I don't anymore.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. I know. I loved it. I love all the different ways you can ski, but I mostly these days because it's really I do a lot of Nordic skiing these days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So and this is my ignorance. What's the difference from Nordic and alpine? What is Nordic skiing?
Nordic skiing is cross country skiing.
Oh, okay. That's just no paths. You just roll.
Well, actually, these days it is. There's two kinds of Nordic skiing. There's classic when you're stopping the ski on the snow and kick and glide.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And then there's skating.
Okay.
The ski never stops on the snow, so it's faster. But yeah. And then alpine is downhill, and the two used to be one. Right? At one point, there was a form of transportation.
Oh yeah, well that makes sense. Yeah, that's fun. So I've spent some time in Madison. One, I had a cousin play running back for the Badgers.
No way.
A while ago, and then for the last 2 years, me and my buddies went down to Madison for New Year's every year. And we go party down there with friends. And it's a great time. Like, we have a good time in Madison. And in the mornings, we walk that lake walk out there. Yeah. And then we go out to some breakfast places. Has to have mimosas or we're not going to go. But it's such a fun town. It's a super fun college town as well.
Yeah.
I remember when I was at West Virginia, used to hear a lot about Madison because they always put out the rankings every year of the top party schools.
Yes, yeah.
So West Virginia will be top, and then the next year Wisconsin will be top. So everybody trying to throw these crazy parties to get back. And I don't even know who drives around to rank these schools, but sounds like a fun job that I might do one of these.
There's another career idea.
Probably police reports.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's not U.S. News and World Report in college rankings, is it? Yeah. Yeah.
So, did you growing up in Madison? Did you go all the way through high school in Madison?
Yeah, I did. I did, and so in fact, I was in the same house all the way through. And in fact, let's see, what else you want? When I was in high school, I know you're an athlete. I ran track in high school.
What was your events?
Sprints.
Okay. Yep.
100, 200.
Oh yeah.
Did I do the 400? Probably not.
Yeah.
I as a young kid, I grew up with pretty severe asthma, and so I remember in 6th grade winning like all the in our little local track, winning all 4 events. You could only be in 4, and I won all 4. And the teacher's like, "Well, whatever happened to your asthma?" But anyway, so that limited me. I didn't do the longer distances, I think, because it was a little bit of an issue
for sure
at that point.
Yeah, my brother and his wife, they both did track. My brother was mid distance, so he would go 400, 800. And then his wife, she ran 5,000s, 10,000s, and then they ran in college. But they don't run as much as they used to. But I mean, they'll still outrun me any day of the week. They in June they got me along with one of my other brothers. We're going to run a 5K at Grandma's. So I'm kind of starting to train for that. Whew.
Excellent. That's the one the night before the
yep.
Can't think of what it's called, but yeah.
And this year, so usually is after, and I help run the whippersnapper races. So in charge with all the kids, and we have a ball down there, so it's fun. And usually the 5K is after that.
Okay.
Now the 5K is before, and I was talking to Ross the other day. I said, "Dude, I'm gonna be super tired because it's like 10 minutes after." I said, "There's no way I'm going to make both." So I said, well, my conditioner really needs to be high because when we do the kid races, sometimes we'll run around with them. If they start to cry, we help them. Or, we see them come to the finish line. So it's just a lot of energy, a lot of moving. We never stop. And it's like, I was just thinking about that the last couple of days. I was like, all right, I got to get my conditioning up or I'm going to die.
You got some months. You got some months ahead of you.
And it's cold, so I can do that. Kind of cool weather training with the thin air, so that's fun. Yeah. So, did you when you were growing up, did you ever think you wanted to leave out of Madison, or was that never really a thought?
Boy, I wonder. I can't tell you how I thought about that. There was a foregone conclusion in my family at that time that of course you were going to go to Wisconsin because it's in your backyard. Damn it, it's a good school. So why would you go anywhere else? And so I knew I was going to go to college there. I mean, you just assumed. And but did I think I think for a long time I just probably didn't even think about it. Right? Mm-hmm. It's the world, and yeah.
Did your siblings go to Madison?
Yeah, actually. Okay, so yes, all siblings, because again, that's what was the expectation. I will say the youngest sibling, who was the biggest hellraiser in high school, didn't get into Madison, and he went to Eau Claire first year, and then got into Madison. I would say he's probably the most accomplished of the kids, which is maybe a good lesson for kids. A little bit of hell racing, a little bit of thinking outside the box. Yeah,
that's awesome. So, where did you end up going to college? Did you come up to UMD?
No, I went to Madison.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the expectation.
Got it.
Yeah.
So what did you study there?
I studied biochemistry.
Okay, dang. All right.
And and I thought I was going to be a researcher. I thought, of course, I'll do research, but I really loved school. I mean, I just loved. I was really impatient to get to the next class and what in a series and see what was coming next but at the end of my sophomore year, I won a scholarship for excellence in biochemistry. It wasn't a ton of money. It was I can remember
something.
But it was something. And I was walking down State Street. I should say that when I was in college, I always had usually 2 jobs: a waitress job and a lab job. Yeah. And I did. And I was walking down State Street, which is the street that links the university and the Capitol.
Yep.
So it's
I go there.
And I walking down State Street, and I stopped in at a bike store to pick up something for my bike, and they offered me a job, and I started working there. Okay. And so then I had 3 jobs, but this was for the summer, and I ended up using my scholarship money to buy a nice bike. And by the end of that summer, I didn't know that people raced bikes, and by the end of that summer, I was racing bikes, and by the end of the next year, I was on the U.S. national team.
Oh, dang!
Yeah.
Okay.
So I finished school.
Yeah.
And I think I took off. I can't remember if I took off 1 or 2 spring semesters because the season started but it finished up within a half year of when I was expected to finish.
Yeah.
So, but I wasn't. I think that probably diverted what I thought I might do. Giving you other ideas about other things. Yeah.
So when you raced, what was the distances kind of you raced for bikes?
Yeah. So bike racing, there's a couple different kinds. There's actually you can ride on the track.
Okay.
And you can ride on the road.
Got it.
Road races, and the road racing there's two to depends. There's road races that are longer circuits, anywhere from. I mean, you could have a point to point, and for women at that time. Those were, I'd say 50 miles would be like, whereas the men would race like twice that. Mm-hmm. And the longest race the women would race at the time was probably 75.
Okay.
Right around there.
Yeah.
And then the criteriums are short course, like a mile or a mile or less, and they tend to have a whole lot of corners. And so you're going around and around, so faster, you're accelerating out of the corners and using, there's a lot of pack dynamics to the sport anyway, and it's I don't know if it's not heightened in the criteriums, it's a big factor.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's awesome, man. I would see. This is why we do this, because I would have never thought. See, you race bikes. Plus, you came into it, at such a crazy time, and you got onto the U.S. national team super fast. It seems like anyway. So
how to start off as a novice, and then excel so quickly.
How long did you race for?
I only raced for 4 years.
Okay.
And I think it's partly because I was very impatient to figure out what I was going to do with my life. Mm-hmm. And I love the sport.
Yeah.
I love the sport because to succeed in it, you got to have a lot of speed to break away from the pack, so you got to have a jump or an acceleration, but you also have to have endurance, and there's a whole lot of strategy to it, and it's actually kind of mean strategy. Like you're essentially always you're always trying to increase your chance of winning the sprint, right? So if you're an excellent pack sprinter, then you just flying at the pack stays together all to the end, but that's pretty. But even if you're an excellent pack sprinter, something can go wrong. Lots can go wrong. So you're always trying to get a break away from the pack, and there's aerodynamics of the pack that make it's more work to get away and work by yourself.
For sure.
And then so you try to get a little group away, and then once that's safely away and you're out of sight of the pack. Then you start thinking about how you got to break that down. So you got to know what makes it work to get it away, and then you got to know how to break it down to make so because you're trying to get away with just by yourself or
definitely.
So
what were some of the? Did you get to race like? What were some of your favorite places to go race at? Did you race outside the country as well, or
just at the time there wasn't a lot of international racing there was some. I raced in Japan one race.
That's fun though.
I know it was very fun.
I
was tasked with giving a lead out, which means we had the U.S. The world champion sprinter was a person from the U.S. And I was tasked with giving her a lead out for the sprint, which means she'd sit on my wheel so that she could launch herself from my wheel. So I had to position her in the pack to do that. So I did that, but then I still took third.
Okay, that's awesome.
Anyway, where did I like to race? I think as much as I love the mountain races, I think I was best in if there was rolling terrain.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'd die. Yeah. Rolling up hills on the bike. I'm gonna tell you something. So I live on Lake Avenue.
Yeah. Oh, that's not a rolling hill.
It's not, but
that's San Francisco.
I watch some people come up this, especially in the spring, summer. They ride that hill from Canal Park all the way up, and they be struggling, hurting.
Yeah.
But there's an older guy. One day I'm gonna stop him, just ask his name, but he be in the zone, so I don't never want to mess with him. And a couple times this summer, I stood out there because he always come around the same time in the morning. It's like 8 something. I stood out there with a bottle of water, and he just grabbed it from me and kept going. I was like, you know what, I'm alright with that. But I did it a couple times for him. But he does a loop, so he will come up Lake Avenue, go. I think it's like down Masaba, then do it again like 2 or 3 times. And it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how you do this. But legs just pumping. Yeah, it's a sport. I mean, biking is no joke. Some of my friends do that. What's that race from here to like Hinckley? Or maybe it's here to the cities.
There's some... I don't know what it is.
The inline or the...
No, it's a bike. It's a bike ride.
Yeah, it's a bike ride. And I can't think of... I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's 150 miles or 154 miles. People do every year. and you stop halfway in camp, and then you finish it up, but then you drive back. I want to do it one day. I mean, not no time soon, but give me a couple years. When I got it
with a Honda.
With a Honda, because I ain't rode a bike not like that anyway. I mean, the last time I actually rode a bike far was when we did the Park Points Rum and Sell. So I rode from this Canal Park all the way to the other end of Park Point and back. It was, what is it, 9 miles and then 9 miles? 20 miles. I was dead. I was hurting. Butt was hurting on the seat. And I got the wide seat too. It was terrible. So I'm not doing this no more.
Well, there's tricks to that. There's tricks to how you sit it. And get set up on the bike, right? Yeah.
So I got a lot to learn.
Not as many tricks though when you're peasant eyesight.
Yeah, nah. It's either you got it or you don't. So we locked it. So, so when you got done racing, where were you at that time? What did you think? All right, what am I going to do now?
I mean, honestly, now I'm going to get in a bunch of dirt. No, not really dirt. But we didn't talk a lot about my family, but our family was super close. We did almost, and so at that, I'm not telling tales on my day, but my parents divorced at that. We're getting a divorce, and the rest of my siblings had left town, so I felt like I was the one holding, the one there, and. Yeah, but so I applied to medical school. I was like, so I got done with psych. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I don't really want to do research. I love the science of it, but I get kind of impatient with the I just didn't. That wasn't what I wanted to do, and I thought I really wanted to be somewhere where I was working with science and people, science and society. And so at first I applied to medical school, and I got accepted. I was going to go to University of Pennsylvania. I still have a letter, and but I didn't have the finances figured out. And my parents, as I said, my parents were divorced, and I was like, oh, I can't leave town, and so I didn't defer. I just was. This is like, I just said I'm not coming. So I've changed my mind. I'm not coming. And so then I worked for a year, and then I ended up going to grad school. I wanted to find that place where I could mix science and societal concerns, and I ended up going to a program called Land Resources, where it was focused on. I actually did a project looking at pesticides in water and health risk implications, and I got to study across a range of sciences and public health.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So where was that at? Was that still in Wisconsin?
Still in Madison.
Still in Madison. All right. You locked into Madison.
Lots of parts of my life there. Yeah.
Okay. So. Well, keep going. After that, then what?
Well, so I met my husband when just before entering grad school, but we were both going to grad school at the same time.
For the same thing, or
nope? Okay. But though related, he was doing geology and a water resources degree at the same time.
Okay. Yeah.
And he also had grown up at Madison, but we hadn't known each other. Although we did have a dog that ran away during the 4th of July fireworks and ended up at his parents' house.
Oh wow! Okay.
Like some years before.
Like in a more small world.
Yeah. It was weird because they weren't anywhere near. Wasn't the dog went some distance to get to that house? It wasn't near.
They knew where he was going.
Yeah. And then, but in any event, so when we were done with grad school, we ended up coming up to St. Paul for work, and I worked at the Department of Agriculture there, and spent some time there, and changed. I can't remember how many years I had to stop and think. I was there for maybe 3 years. And then I shifted over to the Pollution Control Agency. And I worked in an area called brownfield redevelopment. So that's a reuse redevelopment of potentially or actually contaminated properties. And it was sort of a newer program at the time, and we got to do a lot of policy formulation. I ended up being the supervisor of that program. And from there, this is like by now I was in my mid-30s, and we had our son, right? Eric and I had our first son, and our only son. And I was like, what do I want to do now? What do I do? And the agency was going through this double reorganization. Like the whole agency was being reorganized, and then our section was being reorganized. And there's so many meetings of and kind of foofla and I was offered a job in private consulting and part-time, so I thought that's perfect to be a parent. And when I didn't stay there super long. I didn't just love it. I had a second daughter while I was there, like 2 years apart.
Okay.
And then I mean the shorter version of this was offered a contract work by a county, Hennepin County, who had a revolving loan fund program. So money for to set up a loan program for brownfield cleanup.
Okay.
And they hadn't been able to make it work, and the money was they were threatened. The EPA, who gave them the money, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, was saying we have to take the money back because you haven't made a loan yet. Well, no one had nationwide.
Okay.
It was really a broken program. So they asked, would you be willing to come on and do this on a contract basis and see if you can figure this out? and that ended up oddly launching like a business that I then had for 14 years.
Okay.
And I ended up working with various units of government, with grant funding, usually around brownfield redevelopment, economic development, and so I was always positioned myself as high-level staff support. And so I worked with counties and port authorities and cities, and even did some work for the state, some for some nonprofits, some private, but it let me have flexibility. I had my kids a little later, and it let me have flexibility so I could be part-time, so I enjoyed the work. It was fun to see how lots of different local units of government worked or didn't work. Like what about the different units was effective and what wasn't.
So did you raise your kids in St. Paul?
No, I should have partway through that time. My husband had also taken a job at a bar engineering company here. But one of the reasons why had been offered two jobs, one in Missoula and one at Bar, and we were still in the cities. And we thought long and hard about it because we love the mountains and we'd go out there to go backpacking. But Bar was a well-run company. They had good clients, and they said if you can build your client base up in Duluth, they had a small office at the time. You could move to Duluth, and he had spent time when he was younger here, and we came up and explored, and we liked it. We liked the idea of having more access to the outdoors and the vibrancy of the city. And we just thought it was a neat place. And so, as much as we liked St. Paul, which we did, we were like, that's our goal. And it happened. He built up enough of a client base, and so I moved my business up here, and then I ended up doing a lot of work for the city of Duluth, and I did some for the Duluth Seaway Port Authority. That's where I met them. So you asked me. Sorry, you asked if I. So I moved the business up here, and that's how we got to Duluth.
So did your husband just give the keynote? Or was that?
No.
Oh, that was somebody else.
No, but he worked with, that was Ward Swenson. No, he did a great job, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So they both worked together in the Duluth office.
Retired,
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, Eric retired last October.
Because, most of us, obviously Bar's a huge company, but maybe it's just if you're not in economic development, but a lot of people around here don't really hear the word Bar, of the company as much. And then come to find out at the Commerce dinner, like how big of an operation it is and what they've done in Duluth was amazing.
Well, we have a lot of really good engineering. I mean, an engineering firm, natural resources, just engineering firm. We have a lot of really good engineering firms here in Duluth. I don't want to, I could list them, but there are a number of really good, and they provide important jobs, and they support our regional industries. So it's a good employment sector, and I think I'm really proud of the engineering firms we have here. Yeah.
So before we get too far on the port, you did a lot of work with brownfield, and we hear a lot of that on this podcast. Actually, is that something that you mainly see in like big port cities or big cities, or is it pretty much anywhere?
It's anywhere. I mean, it's anywhere. So if you look back at it's properties that have been used for various, a lot of it's industrial, but not just in gas stations over the years, and a lot of the mistakes of our forefathers and mothers, we didn't, they didn't necessarily know better, right? Once I remember investigating a site where it was a dry cleaning site. Seems pretty, semi-innocent, but they would they had a contract. This was in Minneapolis. They had a contract with an automaker in Michigan, and they'd get these gloves and lay them out outside. That they were washing the gloves, and they just pour solvent all over them, and it just goes into the ground, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, that's that. But so it's basically anything that's been used for industrial purposes that might have been contaminated by the processes there. Sometimes you find out because of this gets way too wonky, but because of the structure of the liability that's really CERCLA, the Superfund law, the federal level and the state level, anyone who's owned that property, even if they didn't, they could potentially be liable for it. So because of that structure, just even the specter of possible contamination was enough, and they recognized by the early 90s that is enough to forestall any reuse of that site. So you were getting big vacancies in the middle of the cities, and the question was like, which then would have more development at the edges, which is not necessarily sustainable. So there was a big effort, I'd say, at the early 90s to come to both from a technology standpoint, from a liability standpoint, and from a financial standpoint. How do we get these sites redeveloped so that in a safe way that's safe for reuse, and what are appropriate uses for these different sites?
Yeah, because you look at like the old U.S. Steel site there where Iconics is, and I think that's the Amazon building, right, going in there?
Yeah, that was the old cement plant. That was a
cement plant.
Yeah.
I mean, all through my childhood, there's a for sale sign there, and you wonder, man, is anybody ever going to do anything? But people are just so timid to get involved with a big project like that, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, and markets get more or less sophisticated about getting used to using so those properties can exist anywhere. There's more of a barrier to their reuse, right? I mean, it takes a little bit more to reuse those sites. So if it's easier for a developer just to go grab the green field at the edge of town, and that's especially true in smaller cities. It gets anyway. So there's a whole I haven't been involved in that area for a while, but I oddly enough just talked to someone at the USCPA in Chicago on the way driving out here, because I was checking in with them on a next step on a property.
So the property that we're at now was a dry cleaners,
where
we do programming, and Valley Youth Center, they own a building with Irving, or maybe I don't know who owns it. I just know they are a part of it. Irving and VYC, and they just applied for money from maybe the acronym that you just mentioned that I don't know. But so in a week or two, I believe it's next week though, they have to come in and drill, like in the ground, to check the brownfield. Because they said it could be like contaminants and stuff in the dirt. Because if they want to rebuild, and for them to get this money, they have to pass these ground tests.
Sure.
Which I don't know much about, but just kind of explain it. So it's interesting. That you brought up dry cleaners. I was like, dang, we're the dry cleaner place. That's the same thing that we going through right now.
Yeah, I don't mean to.
It's just something that we learned.
An interesting example. I'm sure the people at the time didn't think they were doing anything wrong at all. Back in that was probably in the early 50s or something. Yeah.
And then we had Sandy Hoff on not too long ago, and he talked about just the process of building Pier B, how that was brownfield, and how they work with so many different entities and end up making that space work for them. So this like Joe said, we talk about brownfield some, but it's cool to kind of connect the dots, and just those processes and stuff is kind of cool. Which I mean, like you said, we just scratched the surface. I mean, is there a way to get chemicals out of the ground? I don't know. We don't need to get into it, but it is. These are like questions I have. And when we get people on, sometimes we sound ignorant because we are. But we just learned that.
I mean, you can go down a rabbit hole in any area of work, right? So yes, there are ways to clean up properties, and there's there's also ways to get it to the point that reuse is possible and safe.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, so all right, so you had your business, you said, for 14 years.
Yeah.
And then what made you want to get out of that business to do something else?
Well, so I in there were some in between. I guess I did mention. All right. I really like the work I did. I love my clients, and I had St. Paul Port Authority does a lot of industrial redevelopment. I mean, they were more known for that at that point in time. I didn't even know their port work, but I did a lot of I did a lot of work for them, and I really love the dynamism of they did. I love what they did. So I really like my work. I like my clients, but I always felt like I was ready for something different, because either I needed to grow that business, and I wasn't really looking to do that. But this is Duluth, and there's not a ton of jobs that come up that there's not a lot of opportunities. I think, or I felt that way at the time. And I worked for the Port Authority here in Duluth, done some work for them, and they had a position come open for a government and environmental affairs director. And I applied for it, and I got it. And I should explain that I also helped start I was one of 4 founding board members of a nonprofit called Minnesota Brownfields. It still exists today, but it was it worked on education and policy surrounding brownfields in Minnesota to try to improve that and keep it. After I left the state, obviously, but we worked with the state too. So anyway, I also had experience with founding that nonprofit and getting it up and functioning, and had experience with government affairs through my work at the Pollution Control Agency and being head of that program there. So it was just it was a good fit, and they were also looking for someone who could do work with grants, because they were the new executive director at the time recognized they wanted to get grant funding to do more infrastructure work. He recognized the need for that. And,
So what year did you get into that position?
2014.
Oh, okay. Yeah. How was it? How did you like it?
I loved it.
Okay.
I loved it. I mean, I'll tell you that encountering people at Port Authority work throughout the country, so many people will say, "Oh, I didn't know this existed when I found it. It was amazing." Because and amazing is too easy a word, because it's not descriptive. But what's fun about it, it crosses so many industries and so many you encounter. Well, first of all, back up and say we all consume stuff. We don't always acknowledge it or realize it, but if you look at the number of vessels moving around the world at any one point in time, and I can show you looking at marine traffic or something, it's astounding. I mean, it's just crazy. And so we're sort of the cross section of all that stuff moving to get to your door, to get to the store, to get to get to the industrial manufacturing spot, to whatever any kind of stuff you need. It's something like 90% of the world's goods move on ship. But an effective port links it links water with road and rail, and so that in itself, that it's, and if it's working well, people don't know what's going on. It's just there. And so there's the elements of the actual functioning of that freight network is fascinating. The variety of industries you get involved with. On top of that, you're usually sort of an important economic entity within the city that you serve, or where you're located. So it's just a really interesting cross section.
I'm sure it's got to be amazing, the different products that move through. Because I think growing up in Duluth, we always thought, oh yeah, well, taconite goes out here.
Steel, that's it.
And then there's some rocks and grain. And then all of a sudden you see the wind turbines that we were just talking about in the last podcast. We're like, oh, now they do wind turbines. It's like, well, there's probably more than 4 products coming in and out that we don't even know about.
And don't forget, we also have the road and rail connections as well. But yeah, there are. I mean, we always like to say, and I credit my communications director. He loves to say, we move the raw materials of your everyday life through the sport, and we do all the ones you mentioned, and we should be proud of that iron ore. The 80% of the iron ore that goes into first pour steel making or virgin steel making, however you want to call it, in this country comes out of Minnesota,
which is crazy. That's cool as hell to think about.
It's got to move on moves through one of 3 ports on Lake Superior, and to get to the steel making facilities on the lower lakes, and it's a very efficient supply chain, and then they backhaul the limestone that goes into the taconite pellets.
What's the 3 ports? So Duluth is 2 harbors.
Yep.
Duluth, and then what's the
Tack Harbor up the shore.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I just got to say, I am amazed. I never knew that all that limestone was to go back in. I should be embarrassed as a
some of it is-
Minnesotan
it's
to know
actually,
that.
it is used for more than just that. Just to be
Okay.
fair, there's multiple uses of the limestone that comes in
Okay.
here.
But yeah, so when they load up all that limestone and it heads out, a lot of it goes up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I don't know the percentage, but yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That is cool. Now I'm gonna ask a wild question. Do you sometimes like have to work with like the feds for people like trying to bring things in they shouldn't be? This is the movie.
Oh no, that's a
part
good
of-
question.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's Customs and Border Protection.
Okay.
And yes, we do work closely with Customs and Border Protection, but more to set up the controls so that stuff doesn't happen. You know what I mean?
Got
We like, for instance, we have containers at our terminal.
Yep.
I should probably back up and say that there's about 21 terminals in the harbor,
Okay.
and the majority of these, they are bulk, non-hazardous natural resources terminals. They
Okay.
carry like, it's used to the taconite, the iron ore, pellets, the taconite, the limestone, coal. Coal was our number 2 and battled it out for number 1 for many years.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's now it's still our number 2, but it's and then
Yeah, I don't know
limestone's our number 3. Grain is our number 4, but it's our number 1 export by tonnage.
Oh dang. Okay.
And then anyway, so the majority of the terminals are those bulk terminals where the goods move through a chute or on a conveyor belt, and then our terminal, the Port Authority, owns the one general cargo terminal in the harbor, and that's where if you think about goods that are lifted with cranes, they have to be, and so we think about the wind turbines that you mentioned, or so basically big equipment that supports mining, manufacturing, power generation, wind energy, all of that, and then we added the containers on water in 2022, and then we added a regular liner service between Antwerp, Belgium, and Duluth. It also goes through Cleveland. We're the only 2 ports in the Great Lakes that carry containers. That we added in 2022, and then this year we've seen almost like a 3rd liner service that comes from the Mediterranean up to Duluth. On a regular basis.
That's cool.
Because you don't see a lot of containers down there.
No, I was thinking that too.
Yeah, it's not as big as it's not. There's some. It's not huge. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so from my deck, I can see all the ships that come in, which I love. Especially like when it's nice out, I'll sit up there, have a cigar, and just watch the ships and stuff come in, or I'll watch it on my phone. Because my brother came up a couple weeks ago, and I wanted him to see the big ships. Though he lives in Virginia Beach, so they see ships come, but it was just different. And he said, yeah, this is much different, kind of how it works down here, which we take pride in that up here anyway. We think it's the coolest thing in the world, as if nobody else has ships, which is fine.
But you can get really close to them.
Oh yeah, which is
That's
really cool. Yeah, so
at the Duluth entry under the lift bridge. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, what is like? I've always wanted to know this. So, say you have a ship coming in. Say we see the ship today. How long does it take to kind of organize, or what's the word? The logistics to
unload and load the vessel.
Not even that, but to get it from point A to point B.
Okay,
like through all the locks, from ocean to port.
Well, it's about a week from Duluth to the mouth of the St. Lawrence River.
Yeah.
And about another week to Europe, to North Europe.
Okay.
A little more to get to the Med.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah, that's what I'm
weeks.
thinking. Yeah, I was thinking like months.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And it's just nonstop.
6 to 8 months.
Yeah, at least a year and a half. People
When did they put the sails up?
never see their families. And once it passes through our port, how many different like times do they have to stop? Because sometimes you do, like in the winter, you see those ships out there for sometimes a month, just sitting on the water, until they're able to, or a couple weeks at least, until they're able to get through.
That's all dependent on the vessel and their paperwork for and what they're picking up and dropping off, and that's very let's say transit dependent.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's when we do a tour, I would love to just see like some of the logistic stuff, like because it's probably the same thing as air traffic control. You just doing it on water.
Well, we're not a super crowded port. I mean, if you go to someplace like Houston or LA Long Beach, where vessels are coming in and out all the time, so there's not a lot of worrying about how many vessels are orchestrating the vessels through the under the lift bridge. And, I mean, so that's a little different.
Okay.
Yeah, does that make sense?
So how many different entities or government agencies are involved with the Port Authority? Because I better give a shout out. My uncle Norm Voorhees was the commissioner.
Norm's your uncle?
Yes.
Love Norm was one of our commissioners, and we always have a commission. We always make sure there's a commissioner representing labor on our board.
Yeah.
We love Norm. Say thank you to him. Say hi to him.
I will. Yeah.
Yeah. So you asked. I'm sorry. You asked how many different government entities? Oh, so many.
Yeah. So I see. So he was a representative from labor.
Yeah. So we have. We're governed by a 7-member board. Thank you for asking, because that's very important. I should mention both. I mean, as the executive director, right? I report up to a board, and then I have a team, my staff, and then we also have the entity Lake Superior Warehousing. That's our operating agent for our terminal, and those are all really important relationships. So the 7-member board, by our founding statute, we have 3 commissioners appointed by the city council, 2 by the governor, and 2 by the St. Louis County Board of Commissioners. And the St. Louis County Board of Commissioners always appoints their commissioners. So we know they're always going to have 2 commissioners on, 2 county commissioners on. And they like it best if they have one, and this is on them. They're the ones that appoint, but they like to have one from the Duluth area and one from the Iron Range. That works best for them. And then we always make sure one of our city council appointed commissioners represents labor.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I love this kind of stuff. Yesterday we had Nicole Johnson for Minnesota Power.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the questions we were asking her was like so far, because we just didn't know. She talked about like transport and energy.
We're asking her, where does that power line go? What does it do? She's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Stop asking me those technical questions now. Yeah. She's great. Nicole's great.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so, and it's a lot of things, like you said, we see every day, and wonder how a lot of these things work. And sometimes you think you have an idea, which sometimes you do, but other times like, man, it's a little bit more complex, or it's a little simpler than we give credit to. Sometimes with these things, but it's all what kind of makes the city work. I mean, without that port, Duluth's done.
Yeah, well, the port is our identity.
For sure. Like, yeah. Oh yeah, that lift bridge. When you think of Duluth, one of the first, other than Lake Superior, one of the first things that pops in your mind is the lift bridge.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, it is just such a draw. We always talk about when you get to come over the hill. From the highway, you see Duluth, and you get to see the lift bridge. Like, all right, man, I made it back home. I'm good now.
Yeah.
But it's just such a.
Just like coming down up a Thompson Hill, and you see the lake.
Yep.
You see the river and the lake spread out before you. It's great. Mm-hmm. It's a really impressive escarpment away from both those bodies.
For sure.
I love that.
Is this a job you want to retire doing?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, that's how you know you found something you really enjoy.
Well, yeah, and I came into the job as the government and environmental affairs director in my mid-50s. And so, yeah, absolutely, it's
Definitely.
just a great. I mean, I've tried. I look at it as I like my life as there's been various seasons in my life, and usually there's stuff that defines each of those seasons.
Yeah.
And I think that's good for kids to hear, because life, you can't imagine when you're 18 or 22 or 25 or 30 why you lay ahead. You just can't see it.
I'll tell you what, I think about this all the time, of like what life was like when I was a kid, just for me personally, and what I thought I was going to be doing, or paths, I'm gonna do this because
what did you think you'd be doing?
All right, so when I was probably before I was a freshman, I've been playing football forever. So the goal was to make it to the NFL.
And what was your position?
I was a center and a nose guard.
Oh, wow.
So on offense and defense, and then in college just defense. But
and where were you in college?
I went to West Virginia.
Yeah. Okay. When you said West Virginia, I assume that's what. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then came up here and got a second major.
Okay.
A little bit later, but at one point of my life, and this is a little darker, but I didn't think I was going to make it to like 16, like at all. And then a family took me in, and that kind of changed my entire perspective of like getting off the streets, no more selling drugs and stuff or running with gangs. And then it's like, all right, I can do something with my life now. So, and my pop runs this big company doing apparel. So he makes apparel for like all big brands. So everything you see in Walmart or Guess or Nike or like Louis Vuitton, like all of it. He makes all the apparel from start to finish. So he does like make fabric, dyes fabric, cut it, ships it. I mean, everything. So there was one point in my life I was thinking, oh, we're probably working with the company, which we did for a little bit. But then realized I don't think I want to do that long term. Then go back to I want to do football, long term. And then after college, it's kind of you in that break part of like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Which made me move to Minnesota on a whim. I mean, I didn't know nobody. I had 2 cousins that played for the Vikings, and they kind of coaxed me to move up here. Still didn't know what I wanted to do, and just kind of watching how my entire path was, how everything came together when it needed to come together. I just kept living every day, I don't know, it's wild. It's kind of crazy to think about or look back and, and say I'm right where I want to be. Even though at the time, when I was younger, I never thought I'd be working with kids forever, But, this is something I definitely want to do until I die. I mean, I love what I do. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's fun. Kids keep you on your toes. I just turned 33. I feel, whew.
Yeah.
I feel good.
That's a baby.
I know. It's a lad.
No.
This a lad, but getting up there.
A lad.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Now all the kids call me old. One of the kids the other day, they asked me how old I was. One of them said like 42. I was like, what? I'm not 40 like at all.
They have no idea.
At all, yeah. Then another kid, I told the kid, or they said, Paz, when did you graduate? In like the 80s? I was like, in 2010. Like the 80s, that is crazy. I wasn't even around in the 80s, so.
And you wonder why do they think the 80s, and what do they think the 80s were?
Yeah, I mean, shoot, I remember when we was young, what I thought the 80s were. Here's something embarrassing. I think, and maybe more people can admit, will or won't admit it, but they've thought about it, is when I was young, I used to, because, we see pictures of like 50s, 60s, everything was black and white. I swore that the world was black and white back then, and I think like, man, they didn't have color, like, how did people see, how did you know what to put on? Did no clothes match? It was just a wild thing to think about, and then you realize when you get, 11, 12, oh yeah, nah, they had color, they just couldn't take color pictures, anything like that, but, I don't know, it just seemed like such a more simpler time. Even when I grew up in the 90s, I had a ball. A lot of people talk about technology and cell phones, and I'm glad I didn't grow up with as much technology because we were outside. We got to see our friends. I mean, we didn't know who was home unless you went and knocked on the door, and we rode bikes when I was young just to go see where my friends was at. I mean, sometimes we had to steal bikes, which I'm sorry to everybody we stole a bike from, but we didn't always have a bike, or our bike got stolen. So sometimes I ride around trying to figure out where my bike at. But we appreciated just socializing, and being with people and hanging out and talking and not just glued to a screen. I don't know. Life was super simple, and now it's, like we talked about before we had the cameras rolling, a lot of kids, they think they have answers to so much because they see so much, online, or they're being pushed in one direction. It's like, that is definitely not the path you're going to be down. And it's okay. You got to try to figure that out on your own. I can kind of help you get to a path, but a lot of times you just got to walk it, figure it out from there. So,
yeah. Yeah, I do think it's interesting. I try not to judge because I do know that I remember my grandmother, who would have been born in 1903, just thinking, oh, I'm so glad that I lived when I did, because everything there, everything's changing so fast, and that was the best time to live. And I think whenever you talk to people, they tend to think, well, that it was simpler and better when and that could be true.
Yeah.
I remember my dad, they had a truck farm. They did not have much money. They did not at all, but they didn't know any better because no one else did. This was the 30s, and I remember him telling me that he would be assigned to take the cow out to it's a milk cow, it ate grass or whatever, and he would like space out thinking about, well, why does water run downhill? And why there's something I do think it's that it'd be nice for kids to have that freedom to think thoughts and not worry about are they homogenating, are they being just like everybody else, are they being to just be able to think and learn to use their minds in different ways and not being told what they should be thinking or should I think that's what I would wish for kids, because I think it does give them that freedom to to develop their own personal idiom and to understand who they are a little better,
and there's less pressure. It's so much less pressure. Like when I was 12, I mean, people ask you, what do you want to do when you grow up? We don't know. I want to be a fireman. Who doesn't?
What are we seeing?
I want to be a cop. No, I don't. But it is just, you see so many pressures for things, and you think you fail when you don't get there. I was just talking to one of my friends the other day who, he's 28, and he was talking to me, and he said, I feel like I just, I'm failing in life, and I don't own a house of my own yet. I was like, bro, who told you had to have all these things? Like, you're fine. You got a good job. You saving money to get things of your own. You don't need to be married right now. You don't need to have kids, because the moment you make those decisions, now everything switch. And there's no reason to rush yourself into situations that you're just not ready for, prepared for. You don't even know if you want to spend your life with this person yet. You've only been together for a couple months. There's so many things to think about when you can just figure out day to day right now, and everything else will land the way it's supposed to land. I truly do believe that.
Well, and trying to teach kids to, like, 90% of everything that you see on social media is fake.
Fake as hell.
I mean, these people don't own these clothes or do these amazing things. They just project that out because it gets follows. So that's what they're going for.
How many influencers? How often have you seen the story that the influencer then does the sad podcast where they're like, this is too much pressure. I've been really struggling. Turns out, and it's like, it's just not it's not what they think it is. It's all smoke and mirror. That's it.
Yeah. Some of the most unhappy people I know are the richest people I know, or famous. And it's like, you realize, I mean, it's not the answer. You hear people talk about it all the time. Don't get me wrong, money's nice. Having not worry about things is nice. But if that's the only thing you chase, and you forget how to be happy, where to find like lasting joy and things, like you haven't lived the day yet, if that's what you're chasing. We try to push that into kids. It's like, find what makes you happy, that you're going to enjoy, because you got to wake up and go to work every day. There's no way in hell I'm working a 9 to 5 that I dread going to. It's just not going to happen. I'd be home. I live on the street before I do that, because my happiness is like big for me, being in a good place and, I don't know, doing something that I love and enjoy. That's more important than, for me, anything. So,
kids are lucky that you're in their lives. But I will add one. I think confidence feels good. I think to learn to do something that you enjoy doing and to learn the skills necessary to do it. That feels good, and that's a process to get to.
It is. Oh yeah.
But it doesn't. But it can be an enjoyable process to get to. Again, if you're not beating yourself up the whole way, thinking you should be.
Exactly. Speaking of kids, what do your 2 kids? Because you have 2 kids.
2
One
kids.
boy, girl. What do they do now?
So Colin is 27.
Okay.
And he works for he went to school in Madison. The only one of all the grandkids of all the families.
Okay.
He went to Madison. And he majored in applied economics and philosophy with a German. Anyway, with a German, whatever you call that, minor. Or
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, he currently works for an organization called American Institutes for Research.
Okay.
They do research all over the world for.
Research is just your family's thing.
No, well, yeah, but he doesn't do the research.
Oh, okay.
They do research for it's like public health and education and but for countries and states and a lot of government units, but also I believe also some private sector. But he manages the contracts, and he wanted that. He wanted to negotiate and manage and whatever, do the study.
Yeah. Why not?
So he's currently applying to law school.
Cool.
And he's just getting his letters back. So so that's Colin, and he lives with his girlfriend in Madison.
Okay.
And she's finishing up a doctorate, and they're trying to figure out they are planning their next steps together. It's interesting. Yeah. I like how they're very practical about it. Like they want to be together, they want a family. And so everything else is like, how does it fit around this? So
definitely.
that's them. And then Helena is 25, and she just she's just completed her national exam as a paramedic, and she works as an EMT.
Okay.
She just loves it. She's actually in Sandstone, but she was in Sandstone. But the I-35 corridor, and she just loves it, and it's fun to see how much she loves it, and she loves the sort of band of brothers aspect of the people that they work together, and and the sort of problem solving. So that's what she does. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. So
how about your husband? Is he still kind of doing?
Neither one of them had a straight path there. Just to say,
and that that's sometimes you got to go all over to get there.
Yeah.
So and then how about your husband? What does he do now?
Well, he's retired.
Okay.
So hopefully he's home cooking dinner.
Right. Get on it.
No, he's
on it.
He was a geologist and water. He worked for bar engineering.
Yeah.
But he was he retired as a principal there. So he worked did a lot of some stuff in brownfields. But at the end of his career, he was working a lot with contaminated sediment cleanups, and he enjoyed his career too.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
good for him. So I got a couple more questions if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
So I know you talked about your family being close when you was younger and growing up. Do you get to see your siblings pretty often? Not often, but a couple times a year.
So my siblings are all over the place.
Okay.
My brother, I have a brother who lives in St. Paul. That's the brother a year older than me. And then my younger brother, the one that I said went to Eau Claire and then went on. He's out in Oregon, at Oregon State. He's the dean of the College of Forestry out there. And
awesome.
And then my sister just retired about a year ago. Oh no, yeah, a year ago, and she lives in Italy.
Oh, awesome.
She and her husband had bought a place there back in 2017 and worked to rebuild it. So and I got to visit.
That's what I was going to say. Have you been out there?
I did.
That's awesome.
I made it a point to get out there this summer to see her. This fall.
Awesome.
So but no, we don't get together as much as and I think it's partly. I don't know if when your parents are divorced. You got multiple. There's not one place to gather around, but we do make it a point to get together. And lately, like there's been 3 weddings now of of that next generation, so that's always an opportunity to get to. And unfortunately, my mother passed last year, and that we're that part the weddings and
definitely
and
Well, cool. That's awesome. I'm gonna talk about Italy real quick, but. So I've been to Italy a couple times, but I want to go there because there's a pastry shop.
Oh, where?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just know it's in Italy.
Okay.
But there's this guy I follow on Instagram. The best look. I'm gonna look it up and I'll shoot you an email and show you. But they're the best. People say it's the best pastries in the world, which I probably agree. Just from looking at it, plus if you know that area out there, I mean, they are so intricate with food and things. But I want to get back there, and I was just telling my partner, I said, we got to go. Even if we just go do that, I don't really care about sightseeing much because I've done it. I'd rather go to other places. But I want to go try those pastries one of these times.
You'll have to send me. You'll have to send me where that is.
Yeah, I'll do that. And he has a couple shops in, I don't even know, 3 different locations. 2 are in Italy, I believe. But I'll look it up and see.
It's funny. It's a funny country. My father's family was from the toe of the boot.
Okay,
which is they were like sharecroppers basically. They and literally they did not own the land, they farmed and they had to turn over a portion.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just the model.
Yep.
So yeah. Anyway, that's not. But it's a beautiful area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is pretty.
Yeah, my grandfather, he immigrated, but they were from northern Italy.
Yeah.
On my dad's side. And I feel like everybody in my family has gone back to Italy, except for us. So I know I got to take my wife there at some point. But
and see where your family came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Is your father? Does he still live in Madison?
Yeah, he was outside of Madison.
Outside of Madison.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna make that distinction because they always say, "Oh, it's like 30 minutes. It's a 30-minute drive. It's not just outside." But anyway, yes, he still lives there.
For sure. Okay.
He's 94 and a half. When you get to be that old, you start talking in half years again.
Yeah.
He's 94 and a half.
Yeah. Just let you know.
He's just getting out of his emeritus lab.
Okay.
He still had a lab that.
Hey, that's wild. Here's a question we like to ask everyone before we wrap up: is if you could say something to your younger self, what would it be?
Be patient with yourself, and that path through life is not linear, and you'll take all sorts of twists and turns that you could not foresee, and just walk into them. Be willing, be unafraid to walk into them, and you'll sort it out.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask for help to sort it out, because that's something I was really bad at, and still probably not great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good skill to have.
Yeah, it is. That's a good skill. I was just talking to a kid about that. They came in to the center the other day and they were failing some classes. I said, "Hey, need some help?" "Oh no, I'm gonna do it on my own. I don't need help from nobody." I said, "Yes, you do. You're failing, and that's okay. Yeah. It's totally okay." Yeah. I'm not going. And one thing you said, "Well, I don't want you to think I'm stupid." I said, "Let me tell you something. I've sat down with 6th graders right now that I have no idea their order of operations for some of the work they get.
Yeah.
If I can't get it, I don't expect them to get it, And high school, I know it's different because y'all are learning things so different than how we've learned them. Yeah. So a lot of the work I'm having to relearn. I said, we just learn it together. It's totally, I'm not going to look at there's a lot of things I don't know. And I'm never afraid to ask those questions. Right. So this what it is, It is. That's a big lesson. I appreciate that for sure. So
yeah, that makes me sad when I hear that when there's so many different ways to think, and I actually think that it's almost worth being taught. Look, you can solve this problem this way and this way. And you can think in different ways, and they're all good. They're all
as long as you arrive at the right answer.
As long as you're persistent.
That's it. Yeah.
You got to persist. You got to
So.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate you having being on with us. This was fun.
Well, thank you.
We've learned a lot for sure.
Very fun to be here with both of you and have this conversation.
And I'm excited to come do a tour down there for sure one of these days.
Come see our terminal. Which is, again, it's unique within the port, and it's. I'll leave you with this, so you're hungry to learn more about it when you get there. It's a multimodal logistics hub. We have all those, we have, the truck and rail and the intermodal, which means transferring between rail and road for containers.
Okay.
And then we have, containers that go on vessel. And we have all the, and we have 500,000 square feet of warehouse space. And so so all of this is, we have, and I haven't gotten to give kudos to my wonderful, our agent, Lake Superior Warehousing, that operates that on our behalf, and they share our mission.
Yep.
And they, but our objective is to provide flexible supply chain solutions with all those assets, which are very infrastructure heavy. Provide flexible supply chain solutions for our regional industries to keep them competitive in the global marketplace. So,
definitely. Awesome.
So you have to come down. That leaves you hungry, wanting more.
Yeah, heck yeah. No, we appreciate what you do. Keeping Duluth alive for sure. We'll tell you that. So. We're grateful for that, and thanks for being with us again, and thank y'all for watching, and we'll see y'all next time on Light Skin. So, bye.